Jesus will never let you go. Let's talk about it on Key Life.
The deepest message of Jesus in the Bible is the radical grace of God to sinners and sufferers. That's what Key Life's all about. So if you're hungry for the hopeful truth that God isn't mad at you, keep listening. Steve Brown is a seminary professor and our teacher on Key Life.
Thank you, Eric. We're looking at the 13 grace gifts that come from abiding in Christ. We've seen that when you hang out with Christ, when you walk with Jesus, really neat things happen. They don't have a thing to do with you. We've seen that you start growing and you can't help it and you can't stop it. One of the things I often tell parents when their kids seem to be going wrong, listen, you gave him a compass and it points in the right direction. And there are times when he hates it, when he would like to get rid of it, but he can't because it's always there. When you became a Christian, something was started in you that meant that you will grow, so quit worrying about it. And then we saw that cleanness is a grace gift, that you are forgiven. You are really forgiven. I remember an Easter cantata that we did in a church where I was the pastor one time. The man who had crucified Christ, he was a soldier and who had rammed the sword into Jesus' side, stands in front of the set, and the choir is all behind him. And he says, I killed Jesus. And the choir shouts loud in unison, forgiven. And he says, but I platted a crown of thorns and I pushed it down on his forehead. And the choir shouts in the background, forgiven. But I took a spear and rammed it into his side, and the choir shouts, forgiven. The choir is shouting that. That's a grace gift. You say, Steve, you don't know what I've done. I mean, you talk about popcorn sins. I did real sins. Speaking of popcorn, Jinx, who's the producer of this broadcast, he was ready for me to begin, and I wasn't ready to get going. I was looking for the next grace gift. He said, the next grace gift is free popcorn. Well, the kind of sin, you say, I did some really bad, I know, forgiven. Forgiven, that's a grace gift. You didn't earn it. You certainly didn't deserve it. But and then productivity. God is going to use you. Did you know that? John 15, 4-5. I sometimes will speak to staff members of major ministries, and I'll teach them. And the first thing I always say to them is that God was doing fine before you came along, and he's going to do fine when you leave. And when you leave, you're not even going to leave a hole. God does not need you. Man, when you're speaking to full-time professional Christians and you say something like that, it can ruin their day. But it's good news because God does as he pleases, and he does it right well without our help. But he lets us come along and see what he's doing. And he uses his people because he likes his people a lot. And that's a grace gift. It always surprises me when somebody will call me and say, Steve, 20 years ago, you don't know me, but 20 years ago, you said something that changed my life. And it was the beginning of my becoming a Christian. And I just wanted to call you and say things. That blows me away. I didn't know. You don't have to know. God is going to use you even if you don't want him to use you. Productivity. I just thought of a pastor on Cape Cod whom I loved. He served a little Baptist church when I was serving on Cape Cod. And sometimes when I was free from my own pulpit, I'd go over to his church and sit on the back row. And you say, well, he must have been a wonderful preacher. He may be the worst preacher I've ever heard. I mean, he butchered the King's English. He said things that he shouldn't have said. His theology was skewed. It was just messed up. You say, well, he must have been good looking. No, he was ugly as sin. Why did you go over there so much? Because he smelled like Jesus. And as he spoke, his words got in my heart, and they blessed me, and they caused my life to be better because of him. And it wasn't him, it was Jesus. 3 or 4 years before, he and his wife had had a baby, and the baby was stillborn. And the people in the church said that the baby was stillborn because this pastor had been unfaithful to his calling. He told me, and he was crying, and I said, man, give me some names, and I'll pray they die. And I've been good at that in the past. And he said, Steve, I can't do that. I love those people. And there was something about him that was different. And God used him in so many ways to lead so many people to Christ. And there was no reason for it except Jesus. Listen, he'll do exactly the same thing with you. You say, I don't know enough. Well, nobody does. I'm not good enough. Nobody is. I'm not smart enough. Welcome to the club. It's Jesus, dummy. It's Jesus. Now, let me show you another grace gift. The fourth grace gift that comes from abiding in Christ is security. Look at the 6th verse. If a man does not abide in me, he's cast forth as a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered and thrown into the fire and burned. Now, he's not talking about believers. He's talking about people who aren't believers. Now, note the point that Jesus is making here. Security is the result of abiding. The more you abide, the more secure you are. I can't tell you the number of times when I was a young Christian, I used to say to Jesus, are you still there? Do you still love me? Are you going to leave? Have I messed it up so bad that you're going to say, I've had it with you? And each time, and I know he got tired of it, Jesus said, Brown, I told you, I'm not going to let you go. Did you think I was just talking through my hat? I'm not going to let, over and over and over again. I haven't said that to him in 10 years. And you know why? Because the more you walk with him, the more secure you get with him. I have some friends who adopted a teenager. No, they weren't very smart. That was, man, it's bad enough when they grow up in your home and they're teenagers. If you're going to go out and find one, what are you, crazy? Well, anyway, they adopted this teenager, and they invited me to dinner, and it was a great dinner. And that was the best behaved teenager I have ever encountered in my entire life. I mean, without being asked, she got up and washed the dishes after the meal. She took the garbage out. She swept the kitchen clean. She said, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, whenever addressed. She said over and over again, is there anything I can do to help? And I'm thinking, there's something weird here. This is not the way teenagers are supposed to be. I mean, if they carry out the garbage, you got to threaten to break their face if they don't. If they wash the dishes, you got to say, you won't have the keys to the car until Jesus returns if you don't do. I mean, that's teenagers. That's what adolescent rebellion, and this kid just worried me. And I thought, I don't think she's all there. There's something wrong with her. And but I was kind of pleased. Well, I was invited back 6 months later for dinner, and she had changed. She was normal, is what she was. She had to be urged to take the garbage out and to wash the dishes, and she didn't say once, is there something I can do to help? What was the difference in those 6 months? In that 6 months, she had been through a bevy of families had been kicked out so many times. And she had said to herself, I'm going to be the best kid on the face of the earth because I like these people and I want to stay with them. But after 6 months, they had convinced her there was nothing that she could do ever that would cause them to kick her out. And she became normal. That's true with you too. That's what abiding in Christ is. The more you hang out with Jesus, the more you begin to see how closely he holds you, that nobody can take them out of my hands. The more you walk with him, the more you realize that you're his. It's security, and it's a wonderful place to live. I've been walking there for a long time, and no matter what I do, or the sin I commit, or the pain I cause, he will never kick me out. You think about that, amen.
Such good news. Thanks, Steve. Join Steve tomorrow on Key Life for Q&A with Pete Alwinson, and then Steve will be back with more teaching from the Gospel of John on Monday. And there's more teaching from Steve available on CD free when you become a part of the Key Life CD family. There's never any charge or obligation. Just call 1-800-KEY-LIFE, ask to become a member of the Key Life CD family, and we'll get your first CD in the mail. Get regular teaching from Steve beyond what you're hearing on this broadcast. We send out free CDs 4 or 5 times a year as funds permit. Call 1-800-KEY-LIFE, toll free, 24 hours a day. That's 1-800-539-5433. Or mail your request to Key Life Network, Post Office Box 5000, Maitland, Florida 32794. If you're in Canada, send your request to Key Life Canada, Post Office Box 28060, Waterloo, Ontario, N2L6J8. Or just email steve@keylife.org and ask to become a part of the Key Life CD family free. The CDs really are free, but we do need your help changing lives with the freeing message that God isn't mad at his children. When you give, you help us produce radio programs, podcasts, magazines, all the free stuff that we give away, and all the freeing stuff at keylife.org. It all has one purpose, to set people free with the good news about God's grace. You can charge a gift on your credit card or include a gift in your envelope. Key Life is a listener-supported production of Key Life Network.